Hey, my name is Alec Wenzel, and today what we're talking about is when should you sell your guitar. Now, if you've been watching the channel a little bit, you've noticed that this guitar has been featured in sort of the last couple of videos. One of those was a review video, so if you want to hear it, I would encourage you to go listen to that video. I'll have it linked on screen and then down below in the description. And then the next video it was sort of featured in was a when should you buy a guitar video. And it's all been because I've sort of been working up to this video, which is a when should you sell your guitar video. And it's because this has been on the chopping block for a really long time. It's not my favorite instrument in the bunch, but I felt like it was an objectively good guitar that I was kind of emotionally attached to. But it's really time to move on from it, and I thought it would be a good topic of discussion for today. Now we're going to talk about this idea of when to sell your guitar a little bit more generally. I'm going to have 3 criteria that you should sort of look at for meeting the threshold on when you think it might be a good time to sell your instrument and help you make that decision. But other than that, we're going to just sort of talk about how it personally relates to me too and what my decision is with this. And yeah, I thought it would just be an interesting thing to kind of talk about. Before we get into all that, my name is Alec Wenzel and I'm trying to grow the channel, so if you could give me a quick like on this video and subscribe, that would really help me out. It's free to you, and I love growing the community and having more people to chat with, so feel free to leave a comment as well. I try to respond to those pretty actively. But with that, let's get into these sort of 3 criteria for when should you sell your guitar, and then at the end we'll sort of talk about why I'm selling this one and mine and how I'm dealing with those criteria. All right, let's jump into it. All right, so this first section, this sort of first category in our set of 3 criteria on whether or not you should sell a guitar is sort of what I'm referring to as the hanger method, right? Or just a like signs of use method. And the hanger method refers to this idea of like how people decide whether or not they're going to keep clothes that they've had for a long time. And it's this idea that you hang all of your clothes in your closet with the hangers facing one direction. And if you get to the end of your season and there's a bunch of hangers that aren't turned around, well, then you know that you didn't wear those articles of clothing and you should probably donate them. This is a similar thing with guitars, right? And I'm not suggesting that you face all your guitars backwards on the stand and then, whichever ones you flip around because you picked up to play them is the like ultimate deciding factor. But it's just a way to think about whether or not you have signs on the guitar that show that it's being used, right? If you love something but you never pick it up to play it and you look at it and there's a bunch of dust on the headstock underneath the strings, then you're probably not picking it up that much, right? If there's dust underneath the strings on the pick guard down here, then, it's not getting moved around. You're not removing strings, right? You're not cleaning it. You're not using it enough that you're changing aspects of the guitar to, fit your needs, keep it clean, right? Another sort of signs of use thing is if anytime you pick up the guitar, the strings are dead, and you feel like you change the strings to play it, and then the next time you pick it up, the strings are dead again, right? Strings age and rust because your fingers have oil on them and there's water in the air. So if you're always looking at a guitar that's not getting played, then the strings probably look like crap, right? They're probably covered in gunk, or they're rusted, or they feel dead. So there's another, signs of use thing if we're referring to this like hanger method as a way to keep track of whether or not you're playing the instrument. Another sort of like sign of lack of use is if you pick it up and you go to play it and there's like fret buzz, right? That means you didn't do anything to adjust the strings, right? And I'm not talking about like changes over a season, right? But typically if there's a guitar that we're playing a lot, we notice those things that go wrong with it and we fix them pretty immediately, right? We intonate the instrument. We make sure it stays in tune. And those are signs of a guitar that's getting used a lot. If you go and pick up a guitar and you notice that strings are dead, it doesn't sound intonated, and maybe there's a bow in the neck due to a change that happened over a season that you never noticed, those are signs that you're probably not playing that guitar. A great example of this is that I have a friend in a different state, and whenever I go to visit them, they always ask me to fix up their guitar, right? And I get there and the neck is all bowed from, the humidity changes over the course of the year. Strings are dead. It doesn't play very well. Maybe there's fret poke. And I go through and I do a little setup for them, and then I come back the next year and it looks the exact same. I know they weren't taking care of that instrument, right? So that means it's probably time to move on from that guitar. If in this idea of the hanger method, you notice that there are signs of you not playing the instrument, then it's probably a good idea to sell it. and get yourself some money so that you can go buy something that you're actually going to pick up on a regular basis. All right, let's move on to category number 2 in our set of 3 criteria. All right, and reason number 2 in our set of 3 criteria of when should you sell a guitar. Number 2 is if you have multiples of the same instrument and you're only playing one of them, then that means that you should probably sell your copies and get something that's a different style of guitar, right? Something that would fill a hole in your collection. It doesn't make any sense to bring 2 Strats to a gig, right? You might want to bring a Strat and like a Les Paul or an ES335 and a Tele, right? If you're bringing 2 of the same thing to every gig, then it's either because, you know, maybe you've got like a different tuning that you want the exact same guitar in. But if you're bringing the same guitar, same of 2 instrument to every gig, right? You've got 2 Les Pauls and you play 1 Les Paul the whole night, then, you know, maybe you don't need that backup as badly as you thought you did. And if you end up needing a backup, maybe it's nice to change it up with a different flavor of instrument. So the thing that we want to watch out for here is if you have multiple copies that you're using, that's not a bad thing. The reasons for that, like I said a second ago, would be different tunings. A standard Strat and an E-flat Strat. A Telecaster in standard and a Telecaster that's meant for playing in open G. That's not crazy. But if you have 2 of the exact same guitar and there's a clear favorite between the 2 of them, then it's probably time to move on from one of them. Then you can get something that you might actually use that would interest you a little bit more. So I'm a big advocate for having one of everything, not multiples of the same thing. So criteria number 2, if you have multiples of the same instrument that you're only playing one of, then sell those and get a guitar that you're actually going to play and that would be a different style of guitar that you might love. That's a great reason to buy a new guitar, is if you're going to fill a hole in your collection. So there's positives to this, right? Not everything is bad when we have to sell an instrument. It means we're probably getting some new stuff. All right, let's move on to category number 3. And finally, getting into that sort of third piece of criteria for when you should sell a guitar is if the vibes of that guitar are kind of bad. While I'm not usually one for that kind of woo-woo language, I feel like we've all had this experience where a buddy sends you a picture of an instrument and goes, "I'm thinking about buying this. What do you think?" And you might go, "I don't know, I wouldn't pick that up. I don't know, I don't like the look of it." And that's sort of what I mean by the vibes are off. There might be something that you can't quite pinpoint about what you don't like about an instrument that you have, but you sort of felt pressured to keep it because you bought it, you thought it was cool at the time, and you just discovered things long term that you didn't like. Maybe the neck is a little too beefy, you don't like the way the pickups sound, the body's too heavy, maybe it's got sharp edges and no contours and it's hard to sort of work your arm around it, and it just feels generally uncomfortable. And all those things lead to us leaving a guitar at home or on the stand or not picking it up. That's when we should definitely sell it to move on to something that we might actually like, right? Something that won't sit there on the stand and make us think like, "Oh, why did I buy that?" And it's okay if you have one of those guitars. I certainly do. That's a little bit of the story with this one. I don't pick it up to play it because the neck feels a little too beefy, the pickups aren't really what I want in a Telecaster, and I didn't know those things until I had the guitar for a really long time. So if you're one of those people where you've got a guitar that's just sitting there that you think is cool but you never play because you don't like some aspect of it, well, then it's time to probably sell it. And you might be thinking, well, oh, I could upgrade it, right? I could change some of these things I don't like. I think that's a great thing to do if it's a guitar that you love and there's a minor issue that you want to change, right? Like maybe you feel like you want to try out some different pickups in it, but that's a pretty easy switch, right? That's not going, well, it digs into my body. If it's something like that, then it would take a lot of time and effort and money to reshape a body to fit something more comfortable for you, right? Or to make it lighter. If the neck feels a little too beefy and you're like, wow, I love the way this sounds, but you know, I can't quite get my hand around it and so I don't reach for it as often, then that's a reason to sell the guitar, right? That's a little bit of a change that's too big to make really easily, right? And I know there are replacement necks and I know you can get necks shaved down. I'm typically not a fan of that, because there's no guarantee you like it after you make that switch. I want to like a majority of the guitar if I'm going to keep it. So that's our third piece of criteria for when should you sell a guitar. If it's just sort of a bad vibe and you can't pinpoint what you don't really like about it, but you keep leaving it at home and you can't really explain it, then maybe it's time to move on and, you know, sell it and get something that you really like, right? That's the big theme of this video. Every section gets finished with, go get something you're gonna play, right? You're gonna be happier that way, I promise. All right, if you've been listening the whole time, again, my name is Alec Wenzel. Please give me a quick like on the video and a subscription. Again, trying to grow the channel, that thing really helps me out. It's free to you, but man, it means the world to me. But getting into this outro, why am I selling this guitar? I've had this guitar for, almost 11 years probably at this point, and the reason I've had it this whole time is because I'm pretty emotionally connected to it. And as I talk about in the review of this guitar, I think it's an objectively good